Some interesting results in the Champions League last night as Arsenal head towards their next Premier League fixture with Mikel Arteta very much in the loop to win another game on the road. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routine. It isn't very much appreciated. Good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Good morning to Stephen and Grant, Temi, Olawale. We've got Tom, we've got Knowledge. Who else have we got in the chat box? Black Shine, Shari, Pika Who, James, Lee, Paul, Loga, Arasilki. Errol, good morning to you, to Rob and Stevie and Damien as well, and the rest of you joining us too. Please make sure you're dropping a like on the video. It is very much appreciated. And this is, of course, the last day of joining you from Spain. Tomorrow I'll be back in the usual surroundings, usual audio and visual settings will, of course, return. Just to give you a quick glimpse behind the curtain, posted this to Twitter yesterday and to Blue Sky as well, to see if you can spot kind of the Arsenal link in the image on your screens. Let us know what you can find in the comment section as well. But it was a very enjoyable evening last night, plenty of good food and more too. But let's crack on with today's Arsenal specific stories and run through all of the Champions League results from the last 2 days. Slovan Bratislava losing 3-2 at home, going down to 10 men against AC Milan. Atletico Madrid winning handsomely 6-0 against Sparta Prague away from home. That Manchester City result, 3-0 up, drawing 3-3 against Feyenoord. Barcelona winning 3-0 against Brest. Bayern Munich winning 1-0 against PSG. Inter Milan getting another 1-0 home victory, just like they did against Arsenal, this time against RB Leipzig, still unbeaten under, I think, Inzaghi in the Champions League at home. Atalanta, a big win for them, 6-1 away at Young Boys. Bayer Leverkusen, another big win for another team, 5-0 against Bayer Leverkusen. Then we move to yesterday's fixtures, of course, but Arsenal winning 5-1, as you very much well know already. Red Star Belgrade winning 5-1 against Stuttgart. Big surprise result there, and a big damaging defeat for the German side. Mika Biereth, former Arsenal youngster, now, of course, permanent Sturm Graz striker, scoring in their 1-0 win over Girona. Monaco losing again with 10 men, 3-2 at home to Benfica. PSV beating another side down to 10 men. 3 results in the last 2 days of Champions League action, finishing 3-2 to the winning side, who have got a man advantage, this time PSV over Shakhtar Donetsk. Aston Villa drawing 0-0 with Juventus, extending Aston Villa's unwinnable run. They've not won a game in 7 matches now with Unai Emery in charge. Real Madrid losing at Anfield 2-0 to Liverpool last night. A really big result for Arne Slot once again as their momentum continues. Celtic drawing 1-1 with Club Brugge. Lille winning 2-1 away at Bologna, and Borussia Dortmund winning 3-0 at Dinamo Zagreb. And that leaves the table looking like this. Arsenal's win over Sporting has indeed risen them through to those top 8 places. They sit on 10 points alongside a number of other teams who are outside of the top 8, including Aston Villa, Sporting, Brest and Lille. Arsenal will need to win their last 3 games now, but it is in their own hands. If Arsenal win their next 3 games against Monaco, Dinamo Zagreb and Girona, they will qualify in the top 8 of the Champions League places. So that's good news for us. Of course, good news for Arsenal in hoping to finish in those important top 8 spots, meaning you qualify immediately for those last kind of positions in the competition. Some interesting absences, of course, from the top 8. Bayern Munich sitting in 13th place right now. Atletico Madrid in 15th. Milan in 16th. Manchester City down on 8 points in 17th. You've got Real Madrid in 24th place, only on 6 points. They have managed to win just 2 games, losing 3. PSG outside of the top 24, meaning that they would, of course, be eliminated entirely from the competition. They sit on just 4 points and sit 25th in the table. Arsenal have got to play, as I said before, Monaco, who are currently sitting, using my eyesight here to try and find where Monaco is sitting. I think they are currently in the top 8. They're 8th in the table at the moment. So you could still argue that Monaco are a very decent side that they've still got to play the other two sides, though. Girona sitting in 30th place, only 3 points to their name, and Dinamo Zagreb as well, a side that have not got many points either, just 7. They're sitting in 23rd place. So you would expect Arsenal to win against Monaco, to win against Zagreb, and to win against Girona, and to solidify their place in those top spots. Mikel Arteta, of course, faced the press following the game against goodness me, I'm just forgetting who we were playing this weekend, but he faced the press to talk about everything that happened in the game over Sporting and that win that was so big for Arsenal away from home. Asked a number of questions about some of the individual players, such as Martin Odegaard. He says, yes, he was again excellent. I think all the boys, if not, you don't have that dominant performance in the scoreline that we have managed to get on the game. They were all exceptional today. And it's a scoreline, I think, that we've lacked this season, those big dominant scorelines. And I think that there's nothing more than Arteta wants them to be ruthless. And he says, yes, you cannot speculate. And we have periods after 39, 40 minutes that we started to do and had to stop it because that's the tendency of the team wanting to do that and control it. We are not good at doing that. Unfortunately, they scored very early in the second half and that created some momentum, but we dealt with it really well. And as I said, it was a big performance and a big win, and we're really happy. He was asked about the fitness of Gabriel, and he says, we don't know because he said he was feeling some discomfort. I was about to make the change of Sterling, but I couldn't make the sub, and we had to make a different one. He was asked about Thomas Partey's form this season. He says, I would agree with you. I think it's one of the best performances I've seen from him, especially the way that he's dominated the game. So that's the level that he can play. He's progressing. And this year he's been so consistent as well because he always has a role. And that's a big thing. He's a massive player for us. So there you go. Plenty of really positive stuff from last night's games in the Champions League, of course. And I think Arsenal's sitting very pretty now in those top 8 spots. But it's a really intriguing kind of battle for those other places and some big teams that are still very far down the table and will probably, if Arsenal can do their job, finish well below the Gunners. But that does, of course, mean should they finish in those spots from 9th through to 24th, that it could be that Arsenal end up playing one of those teams in the last 16 should they automatically qualify as well. So it doesn't mean necessarily that there's good news for Arsenal in the long term, but plenty more of excitement in the Champions League to come. Mikel Arteta will face the press tomorrow ahead of the game against West Ham. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we're going to tackle some of your questions. It's only going to be around for the next 10 minutes or so. We've got to shoot off to catch a bus, so do bear that in mind. I'll try and get as many of these answered as I can, but it is going to be quite a lightning round of questions. Carl says, Tom, if a team finishes outside the top 8, does the position in the next group matter in terms of progression? So teams are seeded when it comes to the last 16 of the competition. There's still a little bit of kind of grey area about what's kind of going on regarding how those teams are seeded, whether it's done on the position that they finish in those first 8 places. So if you finish first, you're seeded first. And then, of course, you'd go up against a team that finished the lowest in that kind of league phase should they progress to the last 16. So I guess that's how it could be done. Equally, it could be done on coefficient. And if it's done on coefficient, then Arsenal aren't set to be really too fortuitous in that. And clubs like Real Madrid will still, of course, be seeded very much higher than Arsenal should they make it to those knockout rounds. I don't think that's the fairest way to do it. It should really be based on where you finish in that league phase and then based on those kind of, points tallies. But I guess we'll find out, Carl, what's going to happen. Ashley says, early prediction, not a result for West Ham. Mine is Timber and Partey playing 90 minutes for Sporting. And I want both to play against Man United. So 60 minutes for Timber and replace them with Partey at right back, Rice and Marino then in midfield. It's going to be intriguing kind of what rotation, if any, Mikel Arteta chooses to do at West Ham. It's not an easy game. They've just gone away from home and beaten Newcastle United. So West Ham can indeed cause plenty of threat. There's still question marks about which players are going to be available for them as well. But Arsenal have got depth now. They've got most of their squad back. Injuries aren't featuring as much. Liverpool, by the way, had a number of injury issues in their game against Real Madrid. Both Conor Bradley and Ibrahim Konate are question marks going into their game against Manchester City this weekend. That massive fixture. Arsenal can either close the gap on Liverpool or even potentially overtake Manchester City this weekend. Clive in the chat box this morning says, fair play for doing your show on holiday, Tom. Lisbon was class, by the way. I hope you had a great time, Clive. I'm sure you did. Saw a lot of fantastic videos from a lot of the Arsenal fans that were out there this week. And you got one more European trip in this league phase, off to Barcelona, of course, nearby to Girona for that next game. Adam says, what does Man City and a bad dog owner have in common? Neither can keep hold of a lead right now, says Adam. Man City losing, of course, 5 in a row and then dropping points in their draw against Feyenoord. Now they've got Liverpool. It could be 6 games without a win for Man City. We sincerely hope that that is the case, but I think we're probably looking for a draw this weekend. Mickey says, Tom, do you think if Liverpool win this weekend, then we should accept them as champions, given they've just beaten Real Madrid? Absolutely not, Mickey. That would be, of course, December. We've still got more than half of the season to play. I saw a stat this morning that came out saying that in February of last season, Liverpool were 5 points ahead of Arsenal and finished 7 points behind them, being a 12-point swing come the end of the campaign. That's, of course, with Jurgen Klopp in charge as well at that time. So, no, absolutely not. We shouldn't accept them as champions, Mickey, and we should be looking to try and win every game. We've got to focus on ourselves. We've got to focus on winning every game that we can and trying to build up to those fixtures coming up. They've not been like this free-flowing, attacking and convincing team that have blown teams away. They have squeezed past opposition. It's also worth pointing out that Real Madrid suffered a number of injury issues themselves going into this game. No Vinicius Jr., Kylian Mbappe has not looked good. They're without a clear and obvious right-back. Valverde's covering there at the moment. They've got their problems, do Real Madrid. So I don't think it's entirely surprising that Liverpool managed to get that result yesterday, but they've not been convincing. I don't think they've convinced anybody so far that they are the champions elect and are without any competition. So plenty more to come, plenty of football still to be played, and plenty can still, of course, happen. Let's go to Rowan, who says, we're reportedly keeping tabs on Atalanta striker Matteo Retegui, according to Calciomercato journalist Maurizio Russo. I haven't too much of him. What are your thoughts? Of course, we played against Retegui earlier this season when he played for Atalanta against us in the Champions League. He's got a fair few goals so far this season. Still a young player, of course, as well. I just think that if Arsenal are going to go for a centre-forward, they need to go for somebody who is absolutely elite. They can't be compromising on this centre-forward position. We need to go and find somebody who is going to be, without question, a massive, massive force in the Premier League for Arsenal. And that's why Isak and Gyökeres stand out for me as those two clear and obvious candidates. Prince said, ridiculous to suggest that Partey at right back when is our best midfielder this season. Why are you forcing to offload Partey to make Rice fill in the 6th position? They are all Arsenal players and deserve equal treatment. I don't think it's ridiculous to suggest right back for Partey at all. I don't think that's the case whatsoever, because Partey had an excellent game against Liverpool playing right back. Of the two, Partey has been better than Rice this season. In the long term, Rice is going to be our anchor. Rice is going to be the number 6 into the foreseeable future. There's no guarantees that Partey stays at Arsenal beyond this season. His contract is, of course, running out at the end of this campaign. So I think there are a few question marks about what we do at right back and what we're going to do moving forwards. But especially with Ben White out injured. But Partey can cover at right back. He's done very well this season when he's been asked to cover in that position. So I don't think it's ridiculous to suggest that at all. I think it's a very reasonable suggestion based upon what we've seen in that role. Adam says, Liverpool are the real deal after beating Real Madrid. I was hoping that they had a good start to the season, but that result is definitely amazing. It's definitely a good result. You can't, beat around the bush. But there are certainly some contingencies that need to be taken to account, being where Real Madrid are, being at Anfield, them having their own injury issues as well. So I think there are questions there. Andy says, Tom, do you feel the manager will pull the trigger in January to get a striker or a wide forward? A striker is almost entirely unlikely. I don't expect a striker to happen. There are no excuses for Arsenal not to sign an attacking player, though. I think Arsenal absolutely have to go into the market in January and add an attacking player. We probably need to add a defender based upon the injuries that we continue to suffer, a versatile fullback maybe to replace Ben White and Tomiyasu in this squad with the injuries that we've got and the impending exit of Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, and maybe one other as well. So there's work to do in January, and I'll be very disappointed if Arsenal don't. And I hope that Arteta certainly does end up with whoever takes over that Edu role in the future. That might not happen in January, but the likes of Jason Ato, of course, who's in the interim position right now, we need to make sure they're getting the right result. Paul says Real Madrid have problems. Liverpool have ridden their luck, but luckily, eventually, it will run out. Damien says, given everything we know about Partey with injuries and also how he is when he's fit, do you offer him a 1 or 2 year contract or let him go? I think that we are moving, all the signs are, Damien, at the moment, that we're moving towards this eventuality where Partey leaves in the summer. There's no indications that contract talks are initiated or ongoing. And while he has been really good this season, the question marks over the fitness continue to not go away. We know that Partey can suffer an injury at any moment and be absent spontaneously. So I just struggle with the idea of kind of a renewal when you can go into the market perhaps in the summer and add a top midfielder that doesn't have the same worry injury-wise and, of course, isn't facing those twilight years of their career. Josh says, it seems that I've got an agenda against Partey over being overly critical. I'm not sure that Josh heard me just say a second ago, I think he's been our best midfielder this season. But apparently you can say that a player has been the best midfielder so far this season and yet still have an agenda. That's rather impressive, I think. Paul says, Real Madrid have problems. Liverpool have ridden their luck. Oh, we've ridden that one already. True Fact says, I hope you're enjoying the food in San Sebastian, Tom. Some of the best food in Spain could be some of the best in Europe if you like Spanish cuisine. It's been very good. Thank you, mate. I very much appreciate that. We had some fantastic food last night. I had a ridiculous number of cheesecakes, a ridiculous number of tortillas as well. Not the tortillas that maybe some of you are thinking of in your head right now, but Spanish ones. They've been absolutely excellent. Tyza says, what are the options out there to replace Jorginho and Partey in the summer? And will you be doing a show on it? Also, I called it out on Mbappe and said he would cause issues for Real Madrid. And you look to be getting that one right. We will be doing a show as we lead up to that summer transfer window, talking about which types of midfielders are going to be available. Of course, Martin Zubimendi's name has come up quite a lot. He will be, of course, a name that continues to be talked about. Maybe he's somebody that is also, again, spoken of. Dirk says, I heard some rumours about Evan Ferguson today. Would you take him? I agree that we need a ready-made player, but we may need to buy potential if we can't get top targets. So this comes from reports suggesting that Evan Ferguson will be available on loan in January. I don't see Arsenal fans making too much sense when it comes to signing him on loan. Why would Brighton loan out a player that they need to get regular game time to up his value and up his fitness again by loaning him to a club where he's not going to play week in, week out? I just don't see Evan Ferguson on loan being a deal that Brighton would accept to Arsenal. They're going to be looking to loan him out to potentially a Premier League club midway through the table that are looking for a centre forward that will play him more regularly. Maybe a Brentford might be that type of club that would be able to be taking on another centre forward to play with Brian Mbeumo. Wissa and Mbeumo both had their injury woes, so maybe that's a club that might make more sense for him to go to. I don't think it makes sense that they would loan Evan Ferguson to Arsenal in January. It's completely counterintuitive as well. Olu says, Real Madrid are without Vinicius, Rodrigo, Militao and Carvajal is not the same. They've also not got Lucas Vazquez, so they're playing Valverde at right back as well. Hence, they have lost 3 of their last 5 in the Champions League. Beating this version of Real Madrid is not a statement. So that might be a little bit too far. Josh says, there's no indication that Partey is being offered a contract, but that can change instantly. And how on earth do you think that we can replace Partey? Extension will happen, Tom, whether you like it or not, Josh. I think you've been a little bit aggressive with the chat for absolutely no reason. As I've said before, I think Partey's been our best midfielder so far this season. There are no indications. I'm just stating the facts in this. There are no indications right now about whether or not Partey will sign a new deal from stuff I've heard, from just being in and around that side of things as well. It's not taking a guess. This is coming from a position of, knowing a few things around what's going on. There are no indications at the moment. There's no suggestions. Saying it will happen is your opinion. We'll see if you're proven right or wrong come the end of the campaign. Derek says, Tom, where's Eddie Nketiah gone? He's not doing that well at Palace. He's been asked to play out a position on that wide right-hand side with Jean-Claude Mateta playing, through the middle. So he's not really been able to have that opportunity to play too much as a centre forward regularly. And I think that's certainly affected his form. But Arsenal did very, very well to get that £30 million. Very, very well indeed. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in and listening. I'll be back with you in the normal surroundings with a longer show, as usual, in the 8 a.m.s tomorrow morning, back in the UK. If you could drop a like on the video, really would appreciate that. We've obviously been doing these throughout the last few days or so, so I hope you have indeed appreciated that. I will speak to you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.